Welcome back to Kings of Columbus here on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, and something new, Landis. We're taking questions from our audience, and we have a new way of doing that because we started a text subscription. We have 12 questions from people who really want to be part of the podcast, Landis, and I'm super psyched to get this rolling here. We'll explain it during the course of the show, but isn't it great to get questions from people?
It is fantastic to get questions from people. We've been kind of, I think, messing around a little bit trying to figure out the best way to do that. And this feels like the right route.
So we're going to give you some football information, but if your interest is piqued by that, we'll explain it in a couple minutes, but we're not here to sell you stuff right off the bat. We're here to talk about football. Expect this frequently on the midweek show from Kings of Columbus. Monday's going to be Kings of the North, Kings of Columbus, where we do our run through the week in Northern football. The midweek show is Kings of Columbus. We're talking Ohio State, and we're going to lean into questions from people as much as we possibly can. I think it'll be at least a portion of every midweek show. It allows us to hit a bunch of topics that even if you're not asking the question, you guys care about it. And we'll still do some deep dives, right, when appropriate, but maybe we'll do half a deep dive and half a Q&A. It's all Q&A tonight, Landis. And we're starting off with our guy, Tyler, who asks this: what is the biggest thing you guys want to see the next 2 weeks that will give Buckeye Nation more confidence as we inch closer to Notre Dame week? And I will say, Landis, man, on Tuesday, Ryan Day was kind of back in that we got to run the ball and be tough kind of conversation, which I was having flashbacks a little bit. So is that it for you? Is it toughness and run the ball, or what do you want to see?
It is not toughness and run the ball. I think, well, I guess I wouldn't mind seeing them have a little more of a cohesive plan running the ball. And we have a run game question later on, so maybe I'll save some of that until we get there. I did not like hearing that. I like you, was a little like, oh, this sounds like last year. This is not, I think, who Ohio State should be. They have the best receivers, throw the ball around. So we'll see where that goes. The thing that I would most like to see, I think, is the pass rush the next couple of weeks, and maybe try to get a little confidence that it's going to show up when they play Notre Dame. I know some people were feeling not so great about the pass rush coming out of the Indiana game. And I'm not quite there. And this isn't me like sounding alarms or anything like that. This is just me, I think, saying that I thought their pass rush was going to be pretty good this year. It turns out that Indiana was not the best test for that. And granted, like whatever you do against Youngstown State, like it only means so much because it's an FCS opponent. If you look at some of the sack numbers allowed by a team like Western Kentucky, who they're going to play in 2 weeks, Western Kentucky, I looked this up last year, had the second most pass attempts in the country and was top 20 in terms of fewest sacks allowed. Like,
really?
It was. I figured like, oh, they throw the ball a lot. They must give up a number of sacks just as like a means of doing business. But they don't. They did not give up any sacks last week against South Florida. They dropped back to pass 52 times. So my view has shifted a little bit on that game. I think that's a product of the way that Western Kentucky plays. Austin Reed, their really good quarterback, does get the ball out quickly. I think they move him around a lot too. He's a pretty good athlete. And I like going into this like, oh, they'll drop back a lot. Well, we'll start to feel that pass rush a bit. So I am pulling back on that some, but the fact that Western Kentucky does not give up a lot of sacks nor a lot of pressures, if Ohio State does get them at a clip that is above average in that game, I think that would be a great sign for when they go into the Notre Dame game, because Sam Hartman, Notre Dame's quarterback, holds on to the ball as long as just about anybody in college football.
Hilltoppers, right? Is that right? Hilltoppers?
The Hilltoppers.
Hilltoppers. Yep. So that's not uncommon, though. A lot of times, I mean, if you watch Ohio State, there'll be 9 games out of the season where it's like a hot potato, and you still can't, they're not, I mean, I've criticized them the last couple of years for not getting more sacks. There are times when if you don't get to the quarterback in 1.3 seconds, the ball's out of his hands. Like, teams know that. They don't want you. Now, still, Chase Young had 16 sacks or whatever. So I do think that's a valid point. Jim Knowles, and by the way, so people know, I am still in my quarantine from, I had COVID. It's like, I don't want to dance around it. It's nothing to be ashamed of.
People get it.
People get it. So I tested positive Saturday morning. So I can't infect a football team. Can you imagine? The number, I'm a tough pill to swallow sometimes anyway. It's like injury report. Saturday morning, hey, the availability report, what's up? It's like 63 guys out. Doug coughed on them. I can't even, I don't, I don't want to give it to anybody. I do not want to give it to Ohio State football players. So I did not go to interviews on Saturday, and I'm not going to interviews on Wednesday, even though I think I kind of could be outside the zone. Don't worry, Ohio State Nation, Buckeye Nation. I'm not going to infect your team.
Yeah, so and also I will add to that we have not been around you either to infect them by proxy, I guess.
And it's not that I don't care about you, but I don't care about you as much as I care about Donovan Jackson. No offense.
Right. Yeah.
And other people don't care about you as much as they care about Donovan Jackson, which is why I don't care about you as much as I care about Donovan Jackson. So what was the mood? I watched the news conferences on Tuesday with Ryan Day and Jim Knowles from my home on the Berm live stream. Sounded great. If anybody's out there, if you want to get a view, come find us. Come find the podcast on YouTube every Tuesday. Boom. Berm sets you up, plugs in all the cords. Great sound, good to go. Was there a vibe? Because the reason I'm bringing it up is because there's some stuff that Jim Knowles said that applies, I think, to you wanting to see the pass rush. What was the mood, though? Was there a vibe in the room on Tuesday at all from Day and Knowles or both?
I think the Ryan Day, like, why are you asking me what's wrong kind of vibe, I think was there. Yeah. Which is, I think kind of persisted throughout all of last year and now has seemed to carry over into this season. Probably dipped a little bit in the off season as things tend to do. Jim Knowles, I think, was different, perhaps even maybe the inverse of that, which is like, why do you think we're good? Like we didn't have to do much against Indiana. Wait until we play. I think he might have used the words like more traditional football, or like that's, I guess, coded talk for like a better team that's more threatening. So I think they were
traditional
all
in the sense of competent.
Yeah, right. So I think their vibes were different, but they both had vibes.
So I want to talk more about Ryan Day vibes later, but Knowles was basically like, we practiced 5 snaps against triple option all week, and then they ran the triple option. And he said, I'm curious to see if they run triple option this year or if they just did it for us.
Yeah.
And so that Indiana offensive coordinator, Walt Bell, who I didn't realize was a fired head coach.
UMass, right? Yeah.
UMass. Were they triple optioning it through Worcester? Where's UMass? I don't know. Were they the streets of Worcester? Were they triple optioning it then? Or did he learn the triple option? Did he go to like a 2-week class in June just to mess up Ohio State?
He's like thumbing through triple option for dummies at practice.
Yeah.
on Tuesday.
Okay. The fullback dive is important to establish in the triple option. So I almost now would run it all year just so it doesn't look like you did it just to like screw with Ohio State. But Jim Knowles basically said, I can't tell anything, right?
Yeah.
So you want to see a better pass rush. He wants to see anything. Like there's nothing to gauge. So you want to see a pass rush in the next 2 games, not because it wasn't there, but because there wasn't an opportunity for it to be there, because Indiana threw the ball the fewest amount last week other than Army, Navy, and Air Force. They could just establish. Wouldn't it be great for the state of Indiana if they had a military? Culver Military Academy is in Indiana. George Steinbrenner went there. Maybe they ran the triple option when George Steinbrenner was in high school in the 20s.
I feel like they have to do it now only because, like, how embarrassing is it for Jim Knowles to say, like, oh, yeah, we practiced it for 6 seconds and then just shut it down. Like, yeah, you need to do it now.
And because Jim Knowles was saying, like, he's in the box, be like, okay, this guy has to do this. This guy has to do this. Like, he's communicating it to the side. He's teaching people. He's teaching Tommy Eichenberg the triple option, like on the fly. And I think, but Tommy Eichenberg's the kind of guy like, I got it.
Yeah. He knows it.
Tommy Eichenberg's like, tackle the fullback when he comes through the hole in the middle. Okay.
When Tommy Eichenberg dreams, it's of stopping the triple option.
Yeah. So I want to see the passing game be dangerous. And that's why a Ryan Day answer about we've got to establish the run. We have a Ryan Day question at the end, and I'll tell you, we're going to talk about Michigan just a tiny bit, wide receiver motivation. We're going to talk about J.J. McCarthy and Drew Aller versus Kyle McCord. We're going to talk about CJ Hicks, talk about Chip Trayanum, talk about Dallas Hayden and Evan Pryor. We're going to talk about coaches' news conferences. We're going to talk about short yardage. A lot of great questions here. But when Ryan Day did start talking about the short yardage stuff again, do you actually think that they do have to establish a run game in order to throw it effectively and for the offense to operate effectively? Or now we're just having, you could have just bought the the old sound of Buckeye Talk. You guys wouldn't have had to actually hire me. You can just play. Here's what Doug said last October. Just abandon the run game. Abandon it. It's that because it's not, I don't think you have to have a good run game. You just can't have a bad run game.
Yeah.
You can have no run game, right? So that's like what messes you up. A bad run game where you're constantly getting 2 yards. That's a problem. If you just give up, hey, Ryan, would you just say, hey, just abandon it? If I was there on Tuesday and I had asked him that, it would have ended the news conference. I did think we're going to get to news conferencing in a second. I don't mean abandon it like right now, but I think maybe they could have abandoned part of it sooner on Saturday, but I don't think that's what it is. Don't they have to be dangerous throwing it to beat Notre Dame? Because I do think Notre Dame's going to score a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. It goes back to something that I think I mentioned maybe on the live post-game show on Saturday night. Like when Ryan Day thinks a game is going to be tight, he sort of leans into that notion and then like calls a more conservative game where like they get big, run the ball, try to dominate time of possession, that kind of thing. I just don't know why they do it. Like I try very hard not to pretend like I know more about football than the guy who gets paid $9 million to be a head coach. So that's not what I'm trying to do. But I see what they have, just like everybody else does. Like, and what you're articulating now too. Like, you have the best receivers in college football, man. Just spread it out and throw it around the yard. And then if the defense adjusts to that and wants to put all their resources out there, then run the ball, because you're probably gonna have a numbers advantage. They pack it in and then just run. Run into like unfavorable box counts where they can't account for everybody they need to block, partly because they don't have a quarterback run threat to help even those numbers. I just don't get it. They're like Ryan Day, I think, might have said we're not going to bang our head against the wall. It's like what they've been doing for the last year plus now is banging their head against the wall.
Throw in order to run. Don't think you have to run. Don't start there. You got to chuck it around to beat Notre Dame. That's what I want to see. I want to see him throw it and be dangerous. I want to see him be varied. I want to see Kyle McCord be comfortable. I want to see Marv and Emeka and Julian and Carnell Tate and Travion Henderson out of the backfield. I want to see them be dynamic in the pass game, and I think that's what I want to see the most.
You want to see them treat their offense like they treated it against Georgia, because their run game was an afterthought against Georgia, mostly because they had no healthy running backs, but they were forced into it.
I'm a little surprised we're having this conversation again. It might just be a one-time thing. I don't want to overreact. Did you see Herbie went nuts? Did
he get mad at people for having opinions again?
Yeah, he got mad at the 15% of Ohio State fans who overreact and make high school players not want to come play at Ohio State. And so I don't disagree with that, because I don't think that's our audience. If you're in that 15% and you're about to be, I think you're not. I just don't think those people like me already. So like, I don't think, right? I think there's different pieces of the audience, and I'm not saying they're wrong or bad. I'm just saying they might want a different kind of podcast. They might like you because everybody likes you. My God, everybody likes you. But we'll see. I'm just, so I get what Herbie's saying, but also like, you're allowed to talk about things a team should be able to do better, right? It's big time college football, and I don't think we have to apologize for that. And in the end, we have to remember we're here to serve the fans. We're not here to serve the players or the coaches, and we don't want to make it unnecessarily difficult on 18 and 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds, but we're here to serve the fans, and performance matters, and it's big boy school. And so we get all of that. There's room to critique how they played as a group and as individuals on Saturday without going nuts. Yeah. So we have some survey stuff about whether people are going nuts or not. I'm going to move up the short yardage question that was lower on the list, and I want to get to it now. It's from Brian in the 214. Running game question: was Saturday's lack of short yardage execution due more to poor offensive line play or to poor vision and choices by the running backs? I understand there's a little bit of both, but in your opinion and analysis, which of the two contributed more to the lack of success? Film guy, what you got, Landis?
So it's funny to me, right? Because I feel the same way. Right? You watch the game and you feel like, man, they are terrible in short yardage. What is wrong with them? We're really talking about 3 plays from that game, I think. And like, there was a 3rd and 2, a 3rd and 2, and a 3rd and 1. Right. And those 3, just sort of in a vacuum in that game, I think were more offensive line miscues than anything else. If you want to go back and look at stuff from last year, I think it's all the things that were mentioned there, right? It depends on what play you're talking about. But for those 3 plays in particular, I do think it was offensive line miscues. I went back and watched them before we started recording. So the first 3rd and 2 was an inside run with Travion Henderson. Aaron Casey, Indiana's linebacker, comes flying through the middle of the formation, and he's a free hitter in the hole. There's nowhere for Travion to go. Travion lowers his shoulder, does try to like run him over, but I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to run somebody over.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Yeah.
Have you ever considered being a lead singer in a band?
Me? Yeah. I think I can sing pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a good presence. Free hitter in the hole is your hit single waiting to happen. Free hitter in the hole.
Yeah.
It's a great chorus, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask a football question. Free hitter in the hole. Also, I challenge our tech subscribers and listeners to come up with ways to use the phrase free hitter in the hole in your everyday life. Like your kids are like trying to get to the toaster in the morning and like one runs into each other and you just like yell free hitter in the hole. What are you supposed to do there? How do you stop the free hitter in the hole?
So on that
free hitter in the hole, free hitter in the hole. He's Bill Landis. He's free hitting in the hole.
Apologies to our listeners. But both, so the first 2 plays they didn't convert. I think that was the issue. There was just like an unblocked guy right there. I think you can try to run him over if he's there, but he should have been blocked in both instances. And actually both I think were kind of miscued by Donovan Jackson, who I think the more we talk about this game, the more people realize like he didn't play very well, which is I guess a little disappointing because you want to see, your 2 veteran returners at least play well when you have new pieces on the offensive line. So the first one, the inside run, Donovan Jackson and Carson Hinsman are like kind of working together to block the defensive tackle. And then I think ideally you want Donovan Jackson to come off that block and climb up to the linebacker. He just didn't do it. So the linebacker was unblocked and made the play. The second play was Mayan Williams on a power run. So it was Chip Trayanum as a lead blocker and Donovan Jackson as the left guard pulls and also helps block for Mayan Williams. So as Donovan is like pulling and shuffling across the line, he's looking like out wide to the right instead of basically looking right in front of him where Aaron Casey was and not blocking him again in the hole. Aaron Casey is there with nobody to stop him from getting through and trying to tackle Mayan Williams. Mayan did a little better of a job. He like kind of sidestepped him, but he still got tripped. So he was short on that play. And then the third short yardage play that didn't work was Josh Simmons completely whiffing on the Devin Brown run.
Maybe more of a ballad. Like a power ballad.
Power ballad? Yeah.
Hitter in the hole.
Like
More
a Creed
that.
song. Like a slow Creed song.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you hear they're singing a Creed song about free hitter in the hole?
Free hitter in the hole.
I got to try that podcast. So is that part of why they put Chip Trayanum in? If you're going to have a free hitter in the hole, you need to run him over. Maybe you put the linebacker in at running back to do that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why they played Chip there a lot. I think that's why they played with a lot of 2 tight ends. Again, to our earlier point, I also think you could just put your receivers out there and spread them out and not play with all 22 players within 12 feet of each other. But again, what do I know?
They didn't run a screen to Travion, did they? Did they run a screen to Travion?
No, I don't know. I think it might have been the only pass to a running back. Maybe was the one to Chip where Kyle was like scrambling and then kind of threw a crazy person pass.
Oh, but they ran a wheel. They ran a wheel to mine.
Oh, the wheel to mine. The wheel route to mine.
They like ran a wheel to mine. I was like, I can't believe Travion's not in the game for that play. Like they set up a running back on a linebacker in space in the pass game, and Travion's like, why is this not me?
Oh, Dallin Hayden, I guess, caught a pass too.
He got in late. All right, now we're rearranging questions because we're hitting on topics. This is a Chip Trayanum question. It's from our guy Campbell Smith. I just want to say Campbell Smith is as loyal as they come. And Campbell, it's great to have you along with us on this ride here on Kings of Columbus. Hey guys, great to have the text going here. Appreciate the wraparound coverage. Can we have a quick Chip Trayanum, Xavier Johnson discussion? Chip's 2023 opening game performance reminded me of X's 2022 opener versus Notre Dame performance. Under the radar, super athletic role player who makes numerous plays that impact the flow of the game for Ohio State. I'd argue Xavier Johnson was Ohio State's 3rd most important offensive player last year behind CJ and Marv. I'd say 2nd. He's a clutch playmaker who stepped up in dire circumstances. Can Chip do something similar this season? I think Chip could be a super dangerous hybrid between Mitch Rossi and Xavier Johnson. If that pans out, do we see less Xavier in general this year? Ryan Day did get a Xavier Johnson question on Tuesday. Didn't he, Landis? It was kind of like we ran out of plays.
Yeah, I think they wanted to play him more. He only played 3 snaps, which is kind of crazy. He's returning kicks too, so maybe they feel less of an urgency to get him in there. But when you're playing with 2 tight ends as much as they did, like you're not going to put Xavier Johnson out there, and they play with like 2 tight ends and 2 running backs a lot. Sometimes there was 1 or no receivers on the field. And Xavier Johnson is like at best still their 4th receiver. So I guess it's not surprising that he didn't play. I don't know what his role is. I think in a world where they are more spread out, he can certainly play more. But if they're gonna want to play a lot of this 2 tight end stuff, then I think that limits his role. I do think Chip's role is something that could expand as the year goes on. Because I agree, it's sort of it's an amplified version, I think, of what they did with Mitch Rossi. Mitch Rossi was very good in that role. Chip is just way more dynamic. Like I think you can do a lot. You can do a lot more with him. And I wonder if so. Like Justin Fry's a run game coordinator, right? And at UCLA they did a lot of cool stuff with like shotgun quarterback in the middle, obviously, and a running back on either side of him, and like did a lot of cool option run game with that. Can you do that with Kyle McCord as your quarterback? I'm not sure. Maybe you can do it with Devin Brown as your quarterback if he ever is the guy in there. But I think Chip is someone like as a blocker and a guy who can be explosive with the ball in his hands, who just unlocks a lot for you if you want to play him out there in those kind of roles.
And I'm not surprised at that role, even though it wasn't maybe exactly what we thought, but just like actual tailback snaps, I even with a healthy Mayan, I do kind of think that may continue because he gives you something there, but that really does set up an opportunity to play 2 tailbacks together when one of the 2 tailbacks isn't really a tailback. He's a tight end, fullback, H-back, offset wing guy who you also might hand the ball to and tell him to run like a tailback. That does unlock some stuff, and I'm very intrigued. That feels like something that you could tinker with now, and then you run that 15 snaps against Notre Dame and tell Notre Dame try to figure out, we've got Mayan and Chip together. We've got Travion and Chip together. We've got Chip and Travion, and now Travion's going to motion out, and Chip's going to go to an offset H-back, and now here comes a jet sweep to a Mecca kind of stuff. Like it's what Ryan loves, which is personnel that allows you to be multi-formational and you're not giving away what you want to do by who's in the game, because Chip can do everything. I really do think Chip could have a borderline gigantic role this year like this.
Yeah, I think he could. I would assume he's their best blocking back. He gives you a lot of what Mayan Williams gives you, but I think he's probably faster. He might not be as sudden as Mayan. Mayan has probably better agility than he gets credit for, but power and speed is what Chip gives you. I would love to see them, and I guess I think I eventually arrive at this point every year, which is why is there always a tight end on the field? I would love to see them get into a situation where they're playing like 20 personnel with just 2 running backs, no tight end, and 3 receivers.
And I do think people have been asking for double tailback sets at Ohio State since longer than I can remember. And they might have done like a snap or 2, like with Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins and stuff, but like they just never really want to get there. But you can do it with Chip because he's not a tailback, because you're treating him like a fullback, but he also has tailback skills. So I do think there's a lot of opportunity there. Which leads us to another question. This is from our guy, Alex. If Mayan has truly been banged up in camp, why didn't we get any Evan Pryor or Dallin Hayden snaps against Indiana? You did get Dallin Hayden on the last series as the tailback for when Devin Brown got in there to do some treadmill snaps at the end of the game. You did not get any Evan Pryor. Why do you think that was the case?
Well, I think Ryan Day made it pretty clear that like Evan Pryor was sort of on his own in terms of perhaps being on the outside looking in of how many guys can you really play. Yeah. And I don't think you can realistically play 5. Mayan, I think, is probably still nursing a little something, which is why he only got 7 carries in that game. I guess you could have just relegated him to the 2 goal line carries that he got for touchdowns and then given the other 5 to Dallin Hayden. But I think it was 1. I think even 4 is a hard number to get to, like meaningful reps for running backs in a game. And 2, they did not have a lot of plays. So it was like kind of like a third for Travion Henderson, Chip Trayanum, and Mayan Williams. Wasn't quite exactly that, but close enough, I think. And if they would have had more plays, maybe you would have saw a little bit more of Dallin, but I just think it's hard to play 4.
Since you bring it up, can I mention that the plays thing was overplayed at the news conference on Tuesday?
Yeah, I don't buy it.
They ran 67 plays in that game. Ohio State did. Do you know how many plays they averaged per game last year, according to math I did.
Is it like 67.5?
It's 67.
Yeah.
Do you know how many plays they ran in CJ Stroud's first game in 2021 against Minnesota?
50 something, right?
46.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was like unbelievable. So now they did have games late last year where they got into the 70s, right? I think they might have run like 77 plays in the Michigan game. And they averaged, to combine the two offenses, averaged 121 plays per game last year. No, excuse me. They averaged 129 plays per game. There were 121 on Saturday because Indiana barely ran any plays. Sometimes when Ohio State, like last year, didn't run many plays, it's because they score so fast. They have like 2-play, 75-yard drives.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. So like that wasn't the case. So I think it could feel, but like if we're talking about like literal opportunities, it really is not that different. It's really not. And by the way, it was a faster game. Their average game time last year was like 3:31. It was 3:15 on Saturday. So they did cut off time, and they didn't really cut off any plays for Ohio State. So I thought Ryan got stuck on that a little bit on Tuesday, which I think is indicative of the fact that I think he was getting stuck on that a little bit in the game on Saturday, which I think is part of why he didn't play Devin Brown, because he was like, oh my God, we're standing around on the sideline. This game is going so slow physically, but yet so fast in the number of plays, nobody can get a rhythm. I don't want to take Kyle out. My gosh, I don't have any plays to spare. When actually, yes, there is an adjustment. It's a new clock rule. They don't stop the clock after first downs like they used to. But it's not as big of a deal. It came up, maybe it's just the questions that were asked on Tuesday. It came up like 5 times on Tuesday. And if you would have said, Ryan, you ran 67 plays last year, you averaged 67 plays. Like what are we doing?
Yeah, I think it's just a new thing to talk about, so people are asking questions about it. And by the end of the year, might they run fewer plays this year than they ran last year? Perhaps. They had fewer possessions in that game. They had 10 possessions. I think it was pointed out there, Ryan Day, that last year against Indiana, they had 15 possessions. And worth pointing out, I suppose, I don't particularly care, because you just, whatever possessions you get, you make the most of them. Like you score touchdowns. They have been top 10 in the country in touchdown rate every year Ryan Day has been here. I think twice they were number 3, once they were number 1. And after the first game, they're number 54. So like, if you had 6 possessions, I don't care that you only had 6 possessions. You're supposed to score when you have the ball, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, we got stuck on it. But we just got to take the facts into account. Like it's 67 and 67. So that's all we got to tell you. All right, let's talk about news conferences, since I wasn't there Tuesday. So our guy Justin in the 937, love hearing you and Bill back together. Thank you. Doing so much content. I don't quite understand the relevance of Northern football, but I'll listen to you and Bill because you've earned that. I have a comment on that, but we'll answer that thing first. My question, are coach press conferences necessary today with the coaches we have giving generic coach speak answers? It has to be frustrating covering the team and getting nothing or lied to. What's the point? Thanks. What are we going to do? Do away with them on Tuesdays, Landis?
No, I mean, I think I understand the spirit of the question. I think they are necessary to give us the opportunity to ask important questions on behalf of you, the fan. It is rather frustrating when the answers aren't particularly forthright or evasive, and maybe that's happening more and more. I don't know that I really feel that, if I'm being honest, but yes, I do think they still serve a purpose.
So Ryan Day's last 3 games are 2 losses and a win that didn't look very good, right? So it's not like jolly time.
Yeah.
So we got to take that into account. You've got to massage a press conference. And I thought it would have been worth somebody throwing in, like in question 3s, asking about how well the defense played to Ryan Day. You can't come out, as much as I'm in favor of hard questions, you can't come out and have 9 straight questions 3 days after a win about why weren't you better? Why weren't you better? Why weren't you better? Because it's not that it's not valid. You're not going to get the answers you want.
Right.
You've got to let them talk about the good things they did. You've got to let them talk about Chip Trayanum. You've got to let them talk about shutting down Indiana and adjusting to the triple option and the way the corners played. And I know that we know we're getting Jim Knowles, but I think that would have helped. And I thought we didn't get to the heart of the matter. You probably asked like the 6th or 7th question. And I thought it was the first one that really got into sort of like, let's explain the quarterback situation in a nuanced way. I really think the question at hand was, Ryan, it felt like the way you explained last week how the quarterbacks would go, it felt like what actually happened didn't match that. Why was that the case? And were the quarterbacks themselves surprised by how it played out? Or had you told them something differently than maybe what you said publicly? And I don't know that we got, I mean, I thought your questions were very good about the nuance of the quarterback thing, but I sensed some frustration from Ryan, and I outlined this to the texters. We'll talk about the texting in a second. I said there's 3 reasons I thought I was frustrated. One is he's always frustrated when the run game doesn't work, and it frustrates him to no end. And he was very frustrated, I think, talking about that the run blocking didn't work. So I think that's very real. 2 is he was frustrated by the clock thing, and I think he got stuck on it.
Yep.
And 3 is every coach gets frustrated with how come you didn't win better, even when it's valid. So I thought those 3 things were at play for a news conference that probably was less productive than usual. I still think generally Ryan Day news conferences are pretty good. What did you think of Tuesday, and what do you think of generally what we've gotten in there with Ryan on Tuesday since he took over?
Yeah, I would agree with you that they're generally pretty good. I think maybe the beat, just sort of at large, does tend to stick on things and like ask repetitive questions that I don't think are entirely necessary sometimes. Like there are, and like I'm guilty of that too. Like I did it. I think I did it this first press conference at camp. Like I asked a question almost verbatim that someone else had asked 10 minutes earlier because I just wasn't listening well enough. So I'm including myself in that. But there are times in there where I feel like, okay, like we've got this, like let's move on to something else, and we stick on things, and then he gets increasingly frustrated, and then the information becomes, I guess, less and less useful. There are also a lot of questions. I think it's a big beat, and sometimes there's like 60 questions getting asked in one of those things, which I would imagine that Ryan Day probably averages more questions per week than any head coach in the country. So at a certain point, I think he just kind of shut down. But I think that he's pretty good. Like he's different than Urban. Like Urban was pretty blunt, but did not necessarily like extrapolate on things all that much. I think he can get Ryan to extrapolate on some things and talk a little bit more about process at times, which I think is interesting.
Okay, so like it's worth it. We have to do it. Like even bad press conferences have value, and I don't think Tuesday was bad. I just don't think frustration leads to good answers. Joy can lead to good answers. Anger can lead to very good answers sometimes. Not that you're out to make people mad, but if they get mad, you know what people get when they get mad? They get honest.
Yep.
So, but like general, like grinding frustration sort of gets you like, I don't, it leads to sort of like I don't know, what do you want me to say kind of answer, which doesn't really serve anything. So again, I think we have to keep in mind in the big picture for a team that is as covered as much as Ohio State is and is as popular as Ohio State, our access is very, very good compared to a lot of other programs. And Ryan Day is very, very human and willing to interact on a human level with the media as we are the conduit to the fans compared to a lot of other coaches. So like, I don't know, go get a taste of Nick Saban and like, be like, oh, I don't know. I mean, like, so, we're just talking about Ryan Day in comparison to himself. I thought he was a little frustrated on Tuesday, but I got it. Last one before our first break. So our guy, Jim from the 716, glad to see the Doug and Bill combo back in action. What is the hesitancy with playing CJ Hicks? Do you think it's performance-based and he's actually not a 5-star talent, or is it coaching, or is it just opportunity, Landis? What's up? Because he played one. PFF said he played one defensive snap on Saturday.
He did play one snap. I mean, I wouldn't say that he's not a 5-star talent because I'd just be guessing. Like we don't watch enough practice to say that. I will say the times we have watched practice, I thought CJ Hicks has looked quite good. So I don't think it's that. I think it is a combination of Tommy and Steele being very good, a coordinator / position coach in Jim Knowles, who has not really lived in a world where he's had like a ton of playable depth at the other places that he's been. And I think is perhaps not used to that or how to manage that, what that should look like kind of stuff. I think linebacker's a hard position, right? I know freshmen have played it. And there are ways you can simplify that position for a young player that perhaps they did not do. Well, they didn't do enough of with CJ last year because he didn't play. So it's a lot of things. I don't know that it's a lack of trust or like an inability on CJ's part. I just think it's a coach who maybe is a little set in his ways with 2 guys who are pretty good playing ahead of him.
I tried, man. I tried to plant the seed with Knowles in the spring with the Raekwon McMillan, Curtis Grant thing. But I can remember when Luke Fickell was the head coach in 11 and Ryan Shazier was a freshman, like begging Luke Fickell to play Ryan Shazier. And linebacker coaches, and Luke was a head coach who was linebacker, like linebacker coaches, Knowles is linebackers coach, won't play linebackers who aren't in the right gap. If you aren't where you're supposed to be every time, they don't care how fast or how strong you are because you're in the wrong place. And I can remember, like with Luke, it was like, but Ryan gets there so fast. Isn't it okay if where he gets to is the wrong place 1 out of 4 times? Because the other 3, he's blowing stuff up. Isn't it worth the trade-off? And like, he couldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. In a lost year, he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't play him. And then we saw what Ryan Shazier became. So I don't know if that's the case with CJ Hicks. That's not a criticism of a young linebacker. It's a difficult position to learn. But I do think, I mean, this goes back to the Baron Browning, Tough Borland. Like once you have a guy who's mastered it, it's hard to take that guy off the field because you have such inherent trust in him. And I think it's what you're saying. I think Knowles is, and I don't even know, like maybe you and I would say he's caught in that, or Knowles would say, I'm bathing in that. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Right.
It's like I'm accidentally playing the linebackers who do the right thing all the time. It's not an accident, brother. So I just think it kind of is what it is. And all of us can, rub our fingers together and wish for more CJ Hicks, but I don't know if I'd be holding my breath.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still holding my breath, I think.
Oh, good.
It makes for great podcasting. I agree with everything you said. And like, I think they have not embraced it. This is like a program thing, not just a Jim Knowles thing. They don't play their young players enough when the opportunities are there to play them. Like second half blowout stuff, they just don't do it, and they need to do it more. So that's one thing. Playing CJ Hicks like when the game is in the balance, I think is a different conversation. One with which like the idea of Steel Chambers actually being pretty good is often ignored. I don't have much of a problem with Steele playing the majority of the will linebacker snaps. I do think he and CJ could coexist if they trust CJ out there. But I also think there are ways that you can put CJ out there again in like a simplified role, which is basically like go stand on the ball and go get the quarterback. Like I don't like stuff like they did with the LSU did with like Harold Perkins last year. I think CJ he might not be that kind of athlete, but he's a former 5-star prospect. He was a top linebacker recruit in his class by some recruiting services. So the athletic ability, I think, is there to use in some way. And it's on the coaches to figure it out. And I hope that they do at some point this year, because I want to see him play at least a little bit.
They also weren't going to play the jack against a triple option offense.
Yeah.
So like that position, the position where he might work in, I'm skeptical is going to exist again in this defense, but especially was not going to exist on Saturday. Like Mitchell Melton got some snaps, but he was just playing defensive end. They did not have a jack-like thing, which is where they've talked about Hicks getting snaps other than linebacker. Okay, quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this Texan thing that we're doing. We're going to talk about comparing quarterbacks, Michigan, what Notre Dame does well, and a really interesting question about at what % effectiveness does Ohio State need to operate to beat various opponents this year? I really like complex questions like that. And of course, at the end, what you watching, what you eating, what you thinking. All next on Kings of Columbus. Free hitter in the hole, hitter in the hole. Hitter in the hole. And we're back on Kings of Columbus, thanks to our new theme song, Free Hitter in the Hole, brought to you by Bill Landis and the Philly Billies. We'll work on that. If somebody wants to write a song, write like a 30-second version of Free Hitter in the Hole. We do not yet have a theme song.
That could be it. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm not going to sing it, though.
And the theme song doesn't have to be Kings of Columbus. I mean, it doesn't have to be obvious. Free Hitter in the Hole. And then we can have Free Hitter in the Hole shirts. We should probably have Free Hitter in the Whole shirts, whether it's our theme song or not.
We can do it. Yeah. We can't sell like stuff that has this logo on it up here because we'll get sued. But
yeah,
I think we could sell Free Hitter in the Whole stuff.
No, we're gonna sell Kings of the North stuff though, because we're gonna make sure we have a logo that does not violate anybody's copyright anywhere. It's just gonna be a sword and a football. More Kings of the North stuff every day. It's the only reason I want to do this show. It's for the swag. So listen, we started a tech subscription, and if you're watching on our YouTube channel, you've been seeing an ad run over the bottom of this. If you're listening on podcasts, podcasts are not a visual medium. Many of you listening were part of it or heard me talk about it on Buckeye Talk, and this is the similar kind of deal. If you're new to it, we'll explain it shorthand for everybody. It's like a podcast in your pocket. Now, the one thing about us is we're giving you a podcast in your pocket every day because the podcast never sleeps, and you get like 3 a day, 20 a week. So this is a version of that. We send you texts. You don't have to go to a message board. You don't have to go read a story. It's our expertise and insight on Ohio State football straight to your phone. It shows up like a text from your friend, because guess what? We are friends. So it costs money. It's not free. It's 20 cents a day. And it was suggested to us that that's 2 dimes a day because we're dropping dimes in the texts, which I kind of think is a pretty good sales pitch. So it's $6 a month, but you get a 14-day free trial when you start. And again, if you've had it, it's going to be a similar experience, but I think heightened because it's going to be me. It's going to be Landis with his football expertise. And Landis, you have some kind of plan to maybe do some X and O stuff on the text. Hopefully we'll get to that in a second. Yep. It's going to be Austin Ward when he breaks news. He's going to break it on the text. He's going to provide his football expertise there too. And then guess what you're getting? You're getting stuff. You're getting Jerry. I've called him Bird. And I've called him Jerry. Jerry Birmingham's the best. Jeremy Birmingham, everybody knows, is the best Ohio State recruiting guy. And he's going to be in your phone, sending you texts like he's your friend with insight, news, analysis, inside info about Ohio State recruiting. So there's a lot of things you can subscribe to out there. And I do understand that $6 a month maybe can feel like a lot. It's $1.50 a week. You can stop by typing the word stop. There's no like long-term commitment. You don't have to call somebody on the phone. We're not hiding behind a wall of like, I can't quit this thing. We're not banking on you forgetting that you subscribed and like that's our model, because we're in your phone. We're in your phone like multiple times a day talking Ohio State football with you. So like you're probably not going to forget that you subscribe. We can't trick you into staying with us. You have to stay because you like it. And a lot of people, in my experience, have liked it. So if you want to try it, it's a great time to do it now. You send a text to this number, 614-662-4509. You get back a link to sign up. You got to put in your name and your credit card info, but you don't get charged for 14 days. And so on day 13 and a half, you can type stop and you're out. And you never get charged, and you get 2 weeks of info to try it. And not everybody likes it, but a lot of people do. But the other thing we do is this: if you want to ask questions on this show, every single question you've heard on this show and will hear on this show is asked by a tech subscriber. Because to us, this is our loyal, educated, dedicated, focused group of fans. They make us smarter. You're paying supposedly for us to give you inside information and make you smarter. You make us smarter because you let us know how the dedicated, educated Ohio State fans think. It's not for trolls. It's not for fly-by-night. It's not for casual fans. It's not. And we love casual fans. We hope casual fans are listening right now and watching. We know you are. It maybe isn't for you. You might not want, if you're a casual fan, you might not want multiple football texts every day. But if Ohio State football is the thing that you love the most in the world, other than your family and friends, maybe your faith, right? The things that really matter, like your hobbies. This is the thing that your hobbies is the most important thing. And you think to yourself, $1.50 a week for the thing I love the most from people I like, from people I trust, Berm, Austin, Landis, and that Doug guy. I'd say try it. If you're listening because you like us and you like Ohio State football, I'd say try it. 614-662-4509. What about the X and O stuff you think you might be able to do, Landis?
Yeah, I got to figure out the best way to do it, but I'm envisioning doing maybe like a play of the week kind of thing, like picking out what I think might be the most interesting play from Ohio State's game that week, diagramming it somehow, explaining why it's important or interesting. What that looks like exactly, I'm not sure yet. Could be me sending you to a link to a YouTube video. Maybe it's just screenshots. And maybe I'll try some different stuff as I go through that to try to figure out best practices. But I think it could be a cool tool to kind of talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I've done in the past, like rewatch kind of stuff that I've done it at Rivals, I've done it at other places I've worked. But it'll come right to your phone via text message now.
And if it's like a YouTube video, it'd be a secret YouTube video, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, not for public consumption.
No,
yeah,
don't tell anybody. Yeah. Hey, if you hear this, you could get the secret YouTube video if you sign up for the text, but don't tell me. So that's what we're doing. That is the hardest I will ever sell you on it. I'm going to drop it in shows, drop the phone number, re-explain it a little bit. Some of you still don't understand what I'm talking about, so you almost have to try it yourself to figure it out. 614-662-4509. But it is a business, and the shows on YouTube and the podcasts are free. So this is like the next step to be like an insider in the circle of trust. And it costs 20 cents a day. So anyway, we love you. You don't have to subscribe for us to love you. We love you because you're here, because you're part of Kings of Columbus on the podcast feed. Also, maybe a song of the day. We'll have a play of the week. We'll have a song of the week. And every week, the song of the week is Free Hitter in the Hole.
I'm gonna text you the lyrics to Free Hitter in the Hole, like one line at a time, so that then by the end of the year, you'll have a full song.
And like every week, it'll be a different style. Like a regular, like a chick, free hitter in the hole. Like, I know like 9 different kinds of music, so this isn't over yet.
Reggae and REM.
Alex in the 708. Do you think Ohio State would be better off with JJ McCarthy or Drew Aller than their current quarterbacks? Also, what is your favorite sandwich shop in Columbus? This is, I'm not making fun of Alex at all, because this is exactly how I would text if I was a tech subscriber. A question that could tear apart the very fabric of Ohio State football. And also, what's a sandwich you like? Can you tear the program down to its very foundation? And also meatball subs. What do we think of this conversation? JJ McCarthy, we thought, and we covered this on the Monday, Kings of the North, Kings of Columbus. JJ McCarthy played very well. He's also a year 2 starter. And Drew Aller looked pretty decent for Penn State. What do you think?
I think I would separate the two. I don't know that I would automatically take Drew Aller over either of Ohio State's guys. They're basically equally as experienced. Drew Aller's the same recruiting class as Devin Brown. I did think Drew Aller looked good. I think like there's a universe where Kyle McCord and Devin Brown look just as good in a similar setting. I think I probably would take JJ. He's a year more experienced. He's a playmaker, albeit an erratic one. But I feel like I did see enough, and like I know it's East Carolina. Like I'm maybe I'm making too much of it, and people rolling their eyes at me. But I thought he looked like much improved as a passer. So I like what I saw.
So there's 2 versions of the JJ McCarthy Kyle McCord discussion. There's the take them as they are right now, and as they are right now, Kyle McCord has 2 starts in his career, and JJ McCarthy started all last season and led Michigan to the playoff. Yep. It has a year more experience. Or there's the like take them as recruit and then have them in the same situation. So I think it's more valuable to have the conversation of, okay, well, what if JJ McCarthy had not played at Ohio State last year, right? To say I'll take the guy with a year under his belt, I think is the right answer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But he got to play because he could beat out Cade McNamara. Nobody was beating out CJ Stroud last year. There wasn't a competition. So do we think that JJ at Ohio State would be more ready than Kyle McCord is right now? Or is that an unanswerable question?
Like, it's mostly unanswerable, but like, I think like the early versions we saw of JJ, I don't think were particularly impressive. So I think
a little loose.
Yeah. I think he'd
a little razzle dazzle.
I think he'd be in a similar spot. But with maybe a little more athleticism to find some answers perhaps that Kyle can't find. But in terms of like understanding the position, being able to make all the throws, read defenses, all that stuff, I think they're in the same spot. And Kyle honestly might be a little better off than JJ was early in his career.
I think there might be a guy at Ohio State who's a little more athletic and has some of the answers, and Ryan Day is playing the other guy instead of him.
I'm here for the discussion. I don't.
Yeah. But like my point is, I think so. Devin Brown is maybe a little more razzle dazzle, maybe a little loose, maybe a little more big play, maybe a little more like JJ. And Ryan Day is leaning towards the steadier version, we think, right? So which might be why he picked Kyle McCord over JJ McCarthy to begin with. I don't know if Ryan Day wanted that kind of quarterback. I'm not saying that's good or bad or right or wrong, but stylistically, He's Tate. We've said he's Michigan Tate. He's Ann Arbor Tate. And now, but he's not. Now he's developed. He's all grown up. But I don't know. We might just be talking ourselves in circle because they're all very good. Well, JJ looked very good and is established. And Aller and Brown and McCord all look like they have potential. But I don't know that you would go out making trades for anybody right now. Right? Like that's the bottom line. I'd make a trade for JJ, I think. But you're making a trade for the year experience guy.
Yes. Yeah.
Line,
yeah.
right?
I'm not saying let's go back in time and redo that recruitment decision. I'm saying, would I rather have a talented guy who's played a lot or potentially talented guy who's not played at all? I think I'd take the former.
But which is not an option at Ohio State because they just lost the 2-year starter to the number 2 pick in the NFL draft.
Right.
And Michigan's old starter plays at Iowa now. So it's a very it's a fun national talk radio thing for people to blah, 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 because there's no answer.
Right.
There's no answer. And we'll see who plays better. But what I would say is if there are Ohio State fans who feel like Ohio State's wrong, I don't think that's right. To think like, well, Ohio State blew it. Well, they could have had McCarthy. They could have had Aller. I'm not there. I mean, maybe we'll be there in November, but I think you can't be there now.
No, I wouldn't be. Yeah, like you said, we could get there, or we could get to like, I can't believe we were having this conversation in September. Look how good Kyle McCord or Devin Brown is.
The number of I can't believe we were having that conversations that I participated in since we started doing podcasts in 2015 is amazing, which is why it's fun. And so we'll try to look back. And like I was having these conversations, as a lot of people were, about CJ Stroud in 2021. What was the other guy's name? What's the guy's name? The Quinn Ewers. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, sometimes you say things and you think things and then you look back and you wonder. From Brad.
Oh, you skipped the sandwich question, man.
No, we're skipping. There's no time for sandwiches. Okay.
What?
There's no. Okay. Landis is like, if that's what this podcast is,
that's what I showed up for.
There's no time for sandwiches. So I'm terrible at this because they're all chain restaurants. So who do you like for sandwiches?
Yeah, I like Wario's.
Okay, well, I like that too. That's steak sandwiches. Yeah.
But you can get a chicken cutlet there. They got a cold cut sandwich. They have interesting and delicious weekly specials that are quite good. The meatball sandwich is sublime. So yeah, that's my spot. They take care of you with the bread there, which is important.
Look, we've eaten there together. It's across the street from Nationwide Arena, and that's the catering we got from my daughter's high school graduation party.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know what also would be a great weekly sandwich there would be a sandwich called Free Hitter in the Hole.
Free Hitter in the Hole.
Oh my God, it sounds delicious. Okay. Sorry, Brad. Here we go. We'll get to you now. Interrupted by sandwich talk. My question is, why is Michigan getting a pass over Ohio State? If the games were reversed from last weekend and Ohio State played East Carolina at home and won 30-3 and Michigan played at Indiana and won 23-3, I can hear Doug saying that Michigan played a harder opponent away than Ohio State and nearly won by the same amount. Instead, everyone thinks beating a worse team at home is the better win. I guarantee that if Ohio State only beat East Carolina by 27 at home, more people would be upset. And everyone would say Ohio played horrible. So here's the thing. If you watch the games, and we talked about this a little bit on Monday, Landis, Michigan came out and did what they wanted to do in the first half and took it to them. And then the scoreboard, whatever. But I think in terms of being who you want to be and doing what you want to do, free hitter in the hole, be who you want to be, do what you want to do. I thought Michigan was significantly past Ohio State, regardless of the score. Yes?
Michigan more or less handled business, I think. It depends on how you want to compare them, I suppose. If you want to get into the nitty gritty analytics of it and talk about success rate, they were fairly similar. Michigan scored touchdowns on 4 of its first 7 drives, and then JJ McCarthy didn't play in the fourth quarter.
That's what I mean.
So, and Ohio State scored 2 touchdowns on 10 possessions with its starters in the entire game. So that's the difference, right? That's the difference. Again, if you want to look at the scoreboard, that's fine. Look at the scoreboard. Michigan scored 1 more touchdown than Ohio State did. That's true. Michigan stopped trying to score touchdowns in the middle of the third quarter. Well, JJ played the whole third quarter.
Here's the thing. Also, 30-3 is more like what a dominant Michigan performance looks like, because you do expect more of a run game defense, right? Even though they threw it much better on Saturday. Whereas the Ohio State score does not look like what you think Ohio State should be, right? So that's part of it. Michigan's supposed to win 30-3. Ohio State's supposed to win 52-17, right? So I do think that's part of it. How do you look and how do you win at your best? Now, I think it's possible that Ohio State maybe this year is going to be more of a 30-3 team. I think maybe it's going to be more of a defense first team, make big plays when you need it, not a relentless offensive machine. And that's okay. That wins.
Yeah.
That wins. So we might, I think, but that's part of it for me. Do people think that Michigan is going to score 56 no matter who they play? Like that's not what we're programmed to think about Michigan. We are programmed to think about Ohio State that way. I think we might have to deprogram our expectations of what good Ohio State looks like, because I think it's possible they could look good and be very successful in some 31-6 wins, which is not where they've been the past couple of years. What about that idea?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I feel like having watched the entire Ohio State game multiple times now, like that score should have been like 38-3. Like I think you're kind of on it, like 41-3. I think they should have had, excuse me, two more touchdowns, I think, than they ended up getting in that game. And then if you look at that, they're scoring as many touchdowns as Michigan scored against East Carolina. I think early on, as they're working through some stuff, I mean, well, we'll see. They might put up 80 this weekend, which will skew the averages. But I think they will be a team that like tries to get by more with defense and like playing efficient on offense, and perhaps not as explosive as we're accustomed to seeing from them. And then as the season progresses, I think they can get more and more explosive, which was kind of the way of it, I think, in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, with CJ Stroud in his first year as a starter. I know they scored more points against Minnesota in the opener than Ohio State did against Indiana this past weekend, but yeah, I'm at least open to the idea that we might have to recalibrate it. I don't know that I'm totally all the way there yet, because they still have Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Ibuka, and I think if they just decide to throw the ball to those guys 15 times a game each, they'll probably put up a 40 burger each week. But it could shift.
From Ardag in the 614, what is Notre Dame's greatest strength, and do you think it plays into a potential weakness for Ohio State offensively or defensively? What do you think, Landis?
I think their greatest strength is their offensive line. And like, I don't know, they have a good offensive line and like some interesting running backs. And I know that's like the most, not the most sexy thing to talk about, but I do think that is like kind of what makes them go, is their offensive line. So does that, lean it or feed into a perceived weakness for Ohio State? I guess my answer is I don't know yet. I have high hopes for Ohio State's defensive line. If they are what I think they are, then I think that matchup is one of the better matchups we could see in all of college football this year. So I'm excited about it more than I am concerned about it, and interested in it more than I am concerned about it. But I do think that like the way Ohio State is kind of operating right now, and it's just one game, like, I don't know, you feel the best about their defensive line too, maybe, if anything you could feel good about on the team. So could be a strength for strength there.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I don't know if like misspoke is the right word, but in running through some lists on Monday, I think I said that like Notre Dame didn't have a dynamic run game, and they have multiple backs they run through. Now here I am. I just didn't like, to me, they're still not at the level of like Wisconsin with the two backs, Penn State with the two backs, Michigan with the two backs. But I know they had the guy who's run for 100 yards in each of the first two games, and they do have multiple backs. So I think you do have to respect their run game, especially behind that offensive line. I think it's the pairing of those tackles protecting and Sam Hartman when he has time.
Yeah.
Right. And a quarterback who can do something when he has time. And I do think, at least in the Navy game, some of their young receivers, that Jaden Greathouse had 2 touchdowns, like young receivers flashed if they're ready to step up a little bit, but I don't think that goes up against a weakness. I almost think that goes up against a strength of this team, which is, well, okay, can JT or Jack or Kenyatta or Caden Curry, Mike Hall up the middle still get opportune pressure at the right time to blow up a drive? And do I think that Sam Hartman's going to pick apart this Ohio State secondary? No, I don't think you're going to pick apart Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun and Sonny Styles and Jordan Hancock and Lathan Ransom. So I think it's strength on strength. So, but I think you have to respect that part of Notre Dame because, again, over the length of my time covering Ohio State, now my 19th year, there's not a lot of weeks in the regular season where you have to go in and respect the opposition's passing attack because usually they're frauds. And I know you don't like Sam Hartman, but I think Sam Hartman behind that offensive line with some young receivers is a passing attack that you have to respect. But it's not that I think Ohio State can't handle it, but I think they're going to have to handle it. And I think Notre Dame's going to get them sometimes too.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I don't think Sam Hartman is a bad quarterback. I just don't think he's Peyton Manning like he was being treated as like the second he transferred there. I think he's good. I think he has flaws. So
you're anti-Wake. I think you're anti-Wake.
Oh, I love Wake. I love what they do down there. When you pull I stayed in the hotel in Winston-Salem last summer.
You have North Carolina blood.
Long Beach Tribe, North Carolina, baby. Those are my people.
Yeah.
Different part.
I didn't mean to imply that you don't respect Wake. I apologize.
Yeah, I do respect Wake. It's just when you pull somebody out of that, especially a quarterback, how do they function? And Sam Hartman's been fine, right? Through his first 2 games, he's been more than fine. He's probably been excellent. But they haven't played anybody, and I have lingering questions about his effectiveness as a passer when he's going up against elite defenses. And I think Ohio State might have one.
Yeah, because I think you just assume if a guy's coming out of Wake, he's probably not going to be very good, like Tim Duncan or Chris Paul. Right? Yeah. Why would you think they're good? Jared from the 937, he's in Van Wert. He's making us work. What % of what Ohio State could and will end up being is needed to beat each major opponent this season? Here's my take, but I'm interested in yours. I love this question. Jared says Ohio State needs to be at 70% of itself to beat Notre Dame and Wisconsin, 80% to beat Penn State, 95% to beat Michigan, and 100% of everything it can be in the playoffs and in the national championship game. What do you think of that breakdown? And Jared, I apologize. This is the kind of thing you could do a whole podcast on, or at least like a 45-minute segment, and we're going to do it in like 7 minutes, but I love thinking this way. Yeah,
it's a great question. I think mostly in line with where he had his percentages. I would probably be higher on Notre Dame and Penn State. I might be like 70% Wisconsin, like 80% Notre Dame, 85% Penn State. But then for Michigan, I'm at 100. And for the playoff game, I'm at 100. So I'm a little higher on the Michigan game too.
The main thing that jumped out to me was be higher on Notre Dame. And I'm not trying to throw a scare into people about Notre Dame, but this is a huge opportunity for them. They have not had, I think, they feel like they have to capitalize on the Sam Hartman thing. And those tackles are legit. And when you can't get to the quarterback and the quarterback is a veteran, it just creates opportunities and it can create frustration on the defense. And so I do think like Ohio State, as much as I don't think the Ohio State defense should be afraid of that, I think it's going to be a great challenge. And Ohio State's going to have to score. I think Ohio State's going to have to score in that game because I do think Notre Dame's going to score. And they're going to is wake up the echoes a thing at Notre Dame?
Yep.
Is that the thing they do?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? What does that even mean? Do you know what that means?
I don't know. I don't know what it means. Does it have to do with Rudy?
It sounds like a sports writer thing. Does it? Wake up. I think they're going to be that's right. Like when you don't actually have football analysis, you say, wake up the echoes. They'd be waking up the echoes. Also, when you have no football analysis, you just sing free hitter in the hole 9 times in the podcast. So Notre Dame's going to be geared for this, man. This is a chance to be a gigantic program shifting, seize the North kind of game for them. So I just think the Ohio State fan base and the Ohio State program needs to be ready for the absolute best of Notre Dame. And so I think that's much closer to 80, 85, maybe not 90, but I think it's really high because of the situation, because no matter how good the quarterbacks play in the next 2 games for Ohio State, they're still not going to be 100% locked in. And that challenge in that road environment in a game that big is just going to be different. And Sam Hartman's been there, done that. So that aspect of that. And then those tackles, again, compare the tackles. My gosh, talk about strength and weakness. Ohio State's offensive tackles versus Notre Dame's offensive tackles. They're not going to have, the opportunity to sit back, climb a court, and just pick people apart the way Sam Hartman might. So I think it's a great question.
I don't think Notre Dame's defensive line is.
They don't have it. Well, I know. It's good that they have Javonte. That is one of those things. It's is their best pass rusher Javonte Jean-Baptiste, who would be Ohio State's 6th best pass rusher?
Who was Ohio State's sixth best pass rusher? Yeah.
Good PFF grade, though. No, I agree. There's no Isaiah Foskey, who was there last year and then was like the second or third round pick in the NFL draft. So there's not a scary guy in the Notre Dame defensive line. So I think that's right. Their tackles are good, though. Okay, great question. Last two before we get to Whatchas. Jordan in the 614. A question about the receivers. I could be jumping to conclusions too quickly here, and I am all for them proving me wrong. But did they seem a little less interested or maybe motivated, a little less motivated during Saturday's game? A little concerned if this turns into a pattern that they could be afraid of getting hurt, which honestly is understandable. A torn ACL for Marvin Mecca loses them a lot of money. I think we used the phrase right after the game on the post-game show, like maybe just like not locked in. I think the Marv stepping out of bounds by an inch sort of led you down that road. What did you think on upon reflection?
Yeah, I probably still felt the same way. Like I don't think that they're out there kind of looking out for number one, afraid of getting injured. Like Mecca had a carry to start the second half on a jet sweep. Marvin went like full extension up to get that ball, fell, and actually did end up hurting himself a little bit. So I'm not really worried about anything like that. Do you monitor the situation? I suppose. I think that's true of any guy kind of in their position when you know you're going to be a first round pick. Like I think that's difficult for any player. So we'll see. My theory on it is that they kind of knew what the game plan was going to be going in there, and probably figured that Ohio State was going to run the ball a lot, or at least try to. Not really overexert itself trying to attack down the field. There were shots in that offense they did call, they just didn't hit. Marvin probably could have had. Obviously, he had the one touchdown was called back on a penalty. He probably was open for at least one other one and perhaps two more. So it's not like they weren't trying to get them the ball. It just didn't work out. So I just think it was a weird game. I'll repeat what I said, where when that happens, Ohio State needs to do a better job of manufacturing touches for those guys. But it wasn't necessary to win that game either. So I guess I understand why they didn't do it.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything at all about guys not trying their hardest. I do just think it's more of the mental thing of it's a new offensive line, it's a new quarterback. Hey, remember when we had Paris and DeJuan and Luke and CJ, and that passing game was fun, and we're not going to be at that level yet. They're at the same level. They're better because they lived through it last year. Mm-hmm. So that part of the passing offense is better, and every other part of the passing offense is significantly worse for now. That's a hard world to live in. You set a standard for yourself, and you're not mad at anybody, but we also can't pretend that it's the same. And Ryan Day even said on Tuesday, it's people were asking, what does Kyle have? What part, how much of the offense? And he was like, does he have what CJ had at the end of last year? No, not even close. Now, does he have what CJ had at the beginning of his career in 2021? Yeah, it's more similar to that. But that's a hard change, man. So I do think you have to, almost don't think it's on them. It's you have to, as you said, run a game plan that keeps them locked in. But you compare what it was like against Indiana versus the Penn State game last year, where it was hey, Marv, can we throw you the ball every snap and have you win us the game single-handedly? And Marv's can we do that every week? That's not what that was on Saturday. So, but how can I see the hardest working player I've ever seen at Ohio State? I don't who works harder? Who's more than Marv? AJ Hawk? I don't know. Okay, he's tied. Who's more? Nobody's more. So the idea is oh, you know what, Marv, could you try a little harder? Marvin Harrison Jr., whose hands are raw from catching 4 million passes this summer. That's not what it's about, but it's about creating an environment to bring out the best of those receivers so that they can be locked in. And I think it was just sort of circumstance, as you said, that created that on Saturday where maybe they weren't.
Yeah. I mean, if it matters at all to you, both those guys, Marvin Emeka and Julian, were out there well before practice on Tuesday when we were shooting our post-game videos, getting work in. I'm not worried about them being checked out, not at all. And I also want you go through one game where both those guys combined to touch the ball 6 times. Ryan Day strikes me as someone who's going to want to make up for that. So yes. I think they'll be okay.
All right, we'll end this with Ryan Day. It's Will in the 717. French Vanilla and Philly Billy. Will says that I answered a version of this question earlier this year on Buckeye Talk, so he's bringing it back now. After the Georgia game, and a comment that I made during the spring, Will's saying this, he was very optimistic that Ryan Day was taking the next step as a head coach, trusting his staff more, trusting his players more, and not coaching in a state of fear and worry. Yet after Ryan backtracked on comments made previously during fall camp and looking at how the Indiana game unfolded, it appears Day has not taken that next step. How confident are you that we will see the Georgia version of Ryan Day this season? If we don't get playoff Ryan Day, I'm worried this team will lose multiple games due to an inexperienced quarterback and offensive line. So I really focused on, they have Quinn Temple in there as a chief of staff who is like keeping Ryan's desk clear and acting like it's like a fullback in his everyday life to allow him to focus on things. This is a play calling conversation. He was going to give that up. This is bringing in James Laurinaitis and having like a guy like that in the building to focus on the Michigan game. This was like a holistic, let it rip. I'm taking a step back, but I'm also like engaging in our culture even more Ryan Day, which I thought was necessary. And I thought we were heading toward that. Now, he didn't turn over the play calling entirely, and it felt like maybe he had a lot to do on Saturday, and it made the decision-making process hard. Do you think we're seeing a changed Ryan Day or not? Did you get a read on how he might operate this year based on one game?
I mean, if I have a read off the one game, then my answer is no. I guess I would give him the opportunity to prove me wrong here with games to come. I would have said in the offseason, like, yeah, I think it's going to happen. And now I'm not there. He seems to be caught in between on stuff. Like, he never outright said, like, I'm definitely giving up play calling, but he took us pretty far down that road only to snatch it back at the last second.
He did.
And, you know, I thought pretty clearly said, I'm going to play both these quarterbacks. And then he didn't do it. So I don't know if he's in his own head and has put himself in a position where he's sort of incapable of becoming that cut it loose guy that I think he needs to be for Ohio State to be its most successful. But I know that I didn't see that guy on Saturday, so I'm not confident that I'm going to see him show up again unless they get to a situation again where they have a month to prepare for a game and he can maybe get out of his own way a little bit.
I do feel like if you said to Ryan, what happened to let it rip Georgia Ryan Day, he might say something like, let it rip Georgia Ryan Day with the first time starting quarterback. You want me to do that with that? And you see, left tackle is at San Diego State last year, right? Let it rip. You want me to let it? You want me to let it rip? Is that what you want? With Josh Fryer and Josh Simmons and Carson Hinsman, who have never done this before, you want me to let it rip? Oh, Kyle McCord. So I think he's living in the world, right?
Yeah.
But that's also like part of the issue because he's in it and above it. Because when you're the head coach, you're always above it. You always have to have the 20,000 foot view. But he's also like he's I don't want to do a war analogy. He's in the hot air balloon looking over the beautiful vista, but he's also down mowing the lawn. And sometimes when you're mowing the beautiful field, it's not so beautiful. And then you're like, shouldn't you just be in the hot air balloon? It looks really good up there. And he's like, who's going to mow the lawn then? You want me to let Brian Hartline mow the lawn? He's never mowed the lawn before. So you're trying to do both.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think big picture, let it rip when you're in the weeds. Which is why I kind of wanted him out of the weeds. Now, he did do it last year as the play caller, but he had nothing to lose. He had come through the fire of the Michigan loss, and he was doing it with two awesome receivers and a veteran quarterback that he trusted implicitly, right? So actually last year, I'm workshopping this as we finish this take. I think Ryan Day needs to lessen his own burden. And I think he did lessen the burden in the Georgia game, and he did it. CJ Stroud helped him do it. And also the circumstances that created the opportunity to play in that game did it. Mm-hmm. Because you were in a nothing to lose situation. Guess what you're not in game one against Indiana? A nothing to lose situation. You've only got things to lose. Yeah. So maybe to think like, why isn't he number 2 pick in the draft quarterback, nothing to lose guy with Kyle McCord on a road game in the Big Ten against a team playing triple option on offense and blitzing dudes on defense? I still thought he would be. And then I think if you tried to whisper that in Ryan Day's ear, he would say, I had to win the frickin' game, man. Go live in your hot air balloon world where you can let it rip. I'm down here mowing the field because somebody's got to do it. Because if you don't mow the field, you're going to get tripped up. I really landed that right.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's mowing. He's mowing, and we're all in the balloon together. And we invited him into the balloon, and he jumped out of the balloon and grabbed the lawnmower from Brian Hartline because he couldn't help himself.
Yeah, he should get back into the balloon. I don't know. I think you're probably right. The thing that I guess would concern me if I'm an Ohio State fan is like the two versions of Ryan Day that everyone is clamoring for him to just be all the time were the products of failure. Like the product of losing to Clemson in 2019 created the 2020 version of Ryan Day against Clemson, and losing to Michigan created, and I guess the circumstances, as you said, created the version we saw against Georgia in the playoff. So if that's the case, that's the only way it brings out like what's going to happen this year before he gets there.
You know what's going to be great for Ryan Day? A 12-team playoff. Nobody wants to lose in college more than Ryan Day. That's like a project I still want to undertake, the let them lose project, because I saw somebody complaining on Twitter like, hey, this Florida State LSU game next year, this game won't even matter because the loser won't automatically be kicked out of the national title race. And I was like, why do we insist on this being the only sport where if you lose your first game, you can't win the national championship? That doesn't exist in any other sport in the world anywhere. Like,
that's also not true, because like if LSU wins the SEC, they're going to go to the playoff.
But like I think we were attached too long in college football to the idea that like wiggle room was bad.
Yeah.
And I think wiggle room's good. So I do think Ryan Day, like after loss, Ryan Day is great, but like in the meantime, he fears the loss still. And I think he especially fears it when his quarterback is learning and his offensive line is learning. Yeah. And he fears the loss, and it prevents him from letting it rip in a variety of ways, whether that comes to the offense or playing quarterbacks or anything else. And so give him a couple weeks, because I do think like once you get to Notre Dame, do they have to let it rip against Notre Dame, or can they play tight and grind it out and hope Chip Trayanum carries 21 times for 111 yards and they win?
I mean, that was a recipe for success last year. So.
But that was because Jackson got hurt, and after the fact, it was like, man, we had a whole bunch of stuff for Jackson. So like it felt like they were ready to do that, and then that threw them off. Would they throw themselves off, or would they be like, oh, wait till you see what we have for Marv in the Notre Dame game?
I mean, if you're that's what I'd be holding on to if I were an Ohio State fan. The hope that is the case. If you're asking me my confidence level that that's actually going to happen, I don't think it's that high.
If Marv comes out on the first snap against Notre Dame and is lined up in the backfield next to Kyle McCord,
it's on.
It's on. Okay. When we come back, we will be doing what you watching, what you eating, what you thinking. And we want to say thank you so much to those tech subscribers who asked those questions. We like to do this. We like going deep, but we also like, jumping on the lily pads across the pond and hitting on a bunch of different things. So everybody who joined us on the texts already on day one, we're over 100 on day one. 614-662-4509. 614-662-4509. Send a text to that number. You get a link back to sign up. Try it for 14 days. See what you think. Whatcha after this? Doug and Bill, what you watching, Landis?
I didn't have like a great one for this, mostly because like we're recording this earlier than normal, so like not as much time has elapsed.
Football season started also, by the way. So
football season did start.
Else.
I guess
how many football games did you watch? In it, like fast forwarding through, it's like we're doing a Northern College football show. You can't watch one game.
Yeah, I probably watched I don't know, like 20.
Yeah, no, I watched at least 15. So like, okay, by the way, so that's why, you didn't find some great new Hulu murder mystery.
Right. So, but I will say this, like, and this is, I guess, potentially embarrassing, but I don't really care because it's true. I've started watching professional wrestling again.
Oh my God. I know people love it.
I find it
I liked it when I was 9.
I liked it. I was a huge fan when I was a kid, like a lot of people. I probably let go of it around the time I got to high school. And then just like cold, like stopped paying attention to it. The only thing I knew about it was the stuff from when I was a kid. And like Austin watches it. So I think that's probably part of it, but I also like would still check in on like WrestleMania and Royal Rumble every year because like those are the two big things. And then like this year I just watched Royal Rumble and like got hooked. And like
Nice.
I've been watching it since like last March, like pretty consistently every week.
So do you watch it mindlessly, or are you super wrapped up in like, oh man, this guy needs a title shot, or I can't believe they did this to that guy, or oh my gosh, they double crossed that guy in that match?
I don't get upset like by results or anything like that. I have wrestlers that I find more entertaining than others. I am now like much more interested in the decision making process behind some of the storylines, like who to decide who gets a push and how they're going to do it, and like who gets to turn heel and turn face and that kind of stuff. Like the psychology of all that, I think is interesting now. So, and like I have like, you know, I'm following Twitter accounts and like reading stories about like why they're doing the things that they're doing. Like I'm not a 34-year-old man who thinks it's real. Like I understand what it is. But I do, if you can detach yourself from that or not get caught up in it, it's pretty entertaining. And also like they're incredible athletes doing crazy stuff.
I'm a little surprised we have not had an Ohio State football player come through and become
It'll happen.
Professional wrestler.
I think it's going to happen because they're doing that more and more now. Like it's a big NIL thing with WWE, especially. They're like bringing in college athletes and putting them in developmental programs.
I can definitely remember asking James about it. If James Laurinaitis was going to follow his dad, and he was like, "Nah, I think I'll play in the NFL for 10 years." And I was like, "That's probably a pretty good decision." I definitely, as a kid, can remember like thinking it was real, and then like kids at school being like, "It's not real." Being like, What do you mean it's not real? And I can remember when Bob Backlund was going for the record of like walking up and down steps the most times. Wrestling was not that interesting back then. He was just like a middle-aged man in a Speedo. And he was like, what could we have him do? It was like, what if he walked up and down steps for like 9 hours? And then the Iron Sheik came out and like prevented his step record. And I was the maddest 7-year-old in America. I can't believe the Iron Sheik did that. And the Iron Sheik was great on Twitter. All right. So I did not watch either. So I'm going to do a what you're reading.
Oh, good. Okay.
And I bribed my daughter, who is 19, to read Catcher in the Rye because she had not yet read it. And I thought you must read Catcher in the Rye about teenage angst while you're a teenager.
Yeah.
You can't read Catcher in the Rye for the first time when you're 41. So there's just a couple like pop culture things that I continue to try to force her to do just for her to have like the touchstone of it. And it's one of these things, you know, they still read the classics in high school to some degree, but you know, they don't have all of them. And like, since I was in high school, they've had more new classics come around. So she didn't read Catcher in the Rye in school, but she read it. I paid her $10. And it's like, it's one of those things. Like I'm a pro bribe parent. If it's like a thing that you really want your kid to do and you're trying to encourage them and like, I don't know. And it's like, just do it. I'll give you $10. Like you're going to give them $10 anyway. So, right. I mean, am I going to give my daughter $10 ever again? But now she's read one of the great American novels and guess what? She loved it. It's one of her 5 favorite books now. So like mission accomplished, but then she wanted to talk about Catcher in the Rye and she was talking about very specific things. And I was like, I read it 36 years ago. So I can't remember every little thing. So I'm going to have to try to read it again this week. Have you read Catcher in the Rye?
I read it when I was a freshman in high school, which I felt like was maybe like a year or two too early. I feel like maybe that should have been like a junior year thing. I can't tell you I remember much about it other than the word phony being in it a lot. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. I really do like to try to enjoy things and think about when they were created and think what else was available in the world in the 40s when that book came out. And all the things that weren't available, and then like that drops on you. And I know it dropped like in a serialized version in magazines, and then I think before they put it together in the book, and it like blows your mind. It's like because everybody, I mean, people were black and white back then, and they weren't even in color, right? So I mean, like that, everything's gray, and then like you drop this book. So I was happy that she read it, and I was happy that she liked it. And if you have to bribe your children to read the classics, have you read a lot of classics? Do you feel like I feel like I've hit on a few, but there's a gazillion I still haven't read?
No, I probably have not read a lot of. I've read like the staples, I guess they make you read in school, but I feel like the ones that would be considered classics, like a lot of them aren't on that list, actually.
Yeah. So if you haven't read Catcher in the Rye, it's like 200 pages. You can knock it out in a weekend.
Yeah.
What are you eating?
So I meant to look this up and I forgot. So there was a Greek food festival over the weekend here. I think there's a couple of them, but like the Columbus one at the Orthodox Church in like Short North was always Labor Day weekend. So my wife and child went there while I was sitting at home in my musky man cave watching football, but they brought me back a gyro. I call it a gyro, which is probably not the right word.
Gyro?
Gyro, yeah. But
Gyro?
I'm not Greek, so I don't say it that way. I just like, they're delicious, and I hadn't had one in a while, so this one was very good. It had a little too much onion on it for my liking, but again, I feel like it's maybe a recurring theme, like different cultures' version of meat in some kind of bread wrapping. The Greeks are right up there, man. They do it right.
Nice. Meat in dough. Yeah. Meat in dough. Do we ever follow up on your peach festival? How'd that go?
Yeah, it was underwhelming. Like, it was fine. We went there and bought a bunch of peaches and brought them home. But like, I was hoping to get some like peach ice cream and like have like some different kinds of peach flavored flair. And it really wasn't that. It was like kind of like a carnival that was just selling peaches.
Oh, come on. You got hoodwinked.
I did.
All right. So this happened to me last week, and I complained about it on Twitter, and people are like, we're going to get an hour on this on the show, aren't we? So I'm going to limit it to a couple minutes. If you've listened to me in the past, you know that I love Chili's because I love chain restaurants and malls. And on my birthday, so my wife had COVID before I did. So my birthday was last Wednesday, and my wife already had COVID, so like we couldn't go out and do anything. And then like I was on the verge of getting COVID, right? And like everyone's in my family, it's just scattered. So it was like, we'll get Chili's takeout for Dad's birthday. And it turns out I had not been to Chili's for a while, and they took my favorite thing off the menu. And I couldn't believe it. It's like my go-to thing that's like part of the reason that I like Chili's does not exist anymore. And it's very basic. It makes me sound basic. It doesn't make me sound basic. I am basic. It's just a buffalo chicken salad. It's not like I can't get buffalo chicken on lettuce somewhere else, but it's what I liked. I like the way they pieced it together. Then I like go and get my chips and salsa and my spicy Diet Coke, and I'm good to go. So it's gone. They took it off the menu in like May. And it turns out then I was mad I hadn't been to Chili's since May, but I found out on my birthday that my favorite chain restaurant took my go-to thing off the menu. And we won't do it all today, but it made me think about like all the like the restaurants in your life that have closed on you, and like how much I'm not gonna start crying. How much it hurts when it's like you love a restaurant, then you go there and it's gone. So this was a version of that. So I'm gonna have to find a different favorite thing at Chili's. But I think that would be a good off-season episode, Landis, of like the most heartbreaking goodbye restaurant experiences in your life. I'm sure you've had things like that happen.
I mean, probably. I'd have to rack my brain a little bit. How much time did you spend researching what happened to the buffalo chicken salad at Chili's?
I mean, it came up pretty quickly that they had a menu change in May, and they took that and a few other things off the menu. But what happened was I went to my Chili's app, and it saves my favorites of the things I order the most frequently, and all my stuff was on there, but the buffalo chicken salad wasn't there. It had vanished from my favorites. So I was like, what's up with this? Why did they take it out of my favorites? And then I was like, furious, like, no, like going through the app and not finding it, and then having to look it up on Google. So Chili's can pretend that we're still friends, and maybe we are. We probably are, but we're fighting. So I'm not doing an hour on it, but I can't believe you don't have like a go-to story of like, oh, there was this sandwich place down the street run by like the old person in the neighborhood. And then, one day I went down there and they said like closed.
Yeah. Well, there was, so like on the corner of my street, there was a deli that I went to all the time. You could like, but when I was a kid, you could go there and get an American hoagie for $1.
Oh my God.
Like a bag of chips
for $1. You grew up in the 30s?
It was crazy. Like thinking about it now was nuts because it was like, the 90s. But it wasn't an abrupt, like it's not there anymore, but it did close when I still lived there. And like when I found out that it was closing, it was devastating. Yeah. Because the thing that took its place which is actually still there. Like I'm shocked. I drove by it the other day to make sure it was still there. Just not as good.
Okay. What are you thinking about?
A football thing I think that came across my desk on Twitter earlier on Tuesday was Neil Brown, the West Virginia head coach, complaining about James Franklin running up the score on them by scoring a touchdown with 6 seconds left. And he said, like, what goes around comes around, and he should just shut up because he's a loser nerd. Like, stop him. If you don't want him to score on you, just stop him. You had your first teamers in there, and they had their backups in there. What are they supposed to do? Just take knees? They were on the 6-yard line. They scored.
You're
Deal
West
with it.
Virginia.
Yeah.
You're not an FCS school. And didn't James Franklin say the backups deserve to try to actually play football too?
Which is true. Yeah.
Which is good for James Franklin.
Right. It was only a few times he said something that I agreed with. Yeah.
Wow, that's not a good look for a guy. He's grasping at straws. Did he think that was going to rally the West Virginia fan base around him? Yeah. Don't fire me. Penn State scored with its backup quarterback, and that's not fair.
He can say what goes around comes around because he's not going to be the head coach when Penn State has to go to Morgantown next year.
Yeah, he'll be the tight ends coach for Penn State. All right, so this is what I was thinking about. This was a photo that popped up during preseason camp. It was a picture of an Ohio State player in an interview session, and it was like from the back. There's some people sitting between the player and the camera, and it was like two people with the back of their heads, and it was their gray hair. And I was looking at the hair, and I was like, I think that's Dave Biddle. And then I was like, and that is me. And it was gray, and it was maybe a little more balding in the back than I had realized previously. And there's a story in my family that when my wife and I got married, there was the church we got married in, there's a balcony. And so the wedding photographer took a picture down on the ceremony from the balcony. And that's the moment that my father-in-law, in seeing that photo, realized he was bald. And like up until and we were all like, we all knew, but it was like from above, like in a way you don't normally look at your head. And so I was looking at my gray, balding more than I realized head. And then I thought to myself, I don't ever see that. So should I or any of us care what the back of our heads look like? So like I look at my arms and my hands and my gut and my knees and my ankles all the time. And I even look at my face because we sit on this YouTube show, and I apologize to everybody that has to look at my face as well. I never look at the back of my head. So that's your problem. It's not my problem.
It's not your problem.
So should I care if I'm gray and balding? Who cares? Why would I bother with it? Or do I owe something to society to do the best I can back there?
No, I don't think you owe him anything. It is weird. I caught a glimpse of the back of my head. We were at the shore, and I had the baby in the ocean, and somebody took a picture of me. Like it was like from the side, but I saw enough of the back of my head. I was like, oh, that's what the back of my head looks like. And I think I'm like I shave my head now because I'm losing my hair, but it's like exceptionally thin on top. And I caught a glimpse of that one time, and I was like, oh, that's no good.
Yeah. We shouldn't know. The secrets, it's okay for that to be a secret. We should ban photos and
except it's not a secret, it's just a secret from you.
No, I know, but those are the best kind of secrets when it's you against the world. Ohio against the world, it's you. It's the back of your head against the world. Everybody else knows, but you are happily oblivious. So I say live your life and don't worry about the back of your head. We did have a question that I skimmed over when someone said, I'm not sure, right? One of the questions, I'm not sure about this Northern football thing. Mm-hmm. I understand the sentiment. We hope you come around on that. I do think it might be more of an anti-South football thing than a Northern football thing. And I'm not so sure. I really like Kings of the North as a name, even though people like Philly Billy and French Vanilla better. Kings of the North, I think, is really good. I'm not so sure the South can cram it. Wouldn't be better. And wouldn't be, it's like, well, why are you group? It's like, it's anybody that when we say the South can cram it in regards to college football, if that doesn't apply to you, then you're in our group. And then we're going to talk about you on our show. So I don't think it's as healthy to define yourself as anti something else. And now all of a sudden it's like a political discussion. I think it's healthier to define yourself by what you are as opposed to what you are not. But if it helps people understand our show, the South can cram it. Maybe we should put it back on the table as a title.
The South. Yeah, but it's a mouthful is the problem.
Well, there's other things that would be there's other things that would be shorter and to the point.
Yeah.
But like FTS. But like we're back on FTS. Do people want to listen to that? It's like time to talk about Boston College on FTS. It's like, oh yeah, I love FTS. Is that how we want to define ourselves, or can't we celebrate who we are collectively, not who we're not? That's all. But if it helps you to think of the show that way, it's KOTNCFB parentheses FTS. But we don't say the parentheses part out loud. Are we okay? Is that okay? Can we do it that way?
That's understood. It's our secret.
Yeah, the FTS is understood. All right. That'll wrap it up for this version of Kings of Columbus. We're going to do this every week, midweek. So this is how you're going to catch us. Monday, Kings of the North, running through the week in Northern football. A show unlike any other in the country. We hope you join us there. Midweek, all about Ohio State. Sometimes diving in, always taking at least some questions, sometimes all questions. And we hope we get more and more tech subscribers and we build more and more of a community here with Kings of Columbus and the podcast. Betting show, where Austin joins us late in the week, usually probably the right Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, Landis, more often than not.
Yes, which we have to figure out for this week because I don't think that the Ohio State-Youngstown State game is on the board anywhere.
Oh, well, let's just set the line to 60. All right, minus 60, and then post-game show. If you caught us after the game on Saturday, that's where Landis and I will be every week. It's live on YouTube as it happens. It does post in the podcast feed later, and you can find it on the YouTube channel later. If you go to our YouTube channel, all the videos are listed, but that post-game show, when it's live, it's only under the live videos at the moment. It doesn't like show back up in the other videos, but it still sits there when it's not live anymore. So you'll find it, but click on the live button. It's like, oh, the post-game show with Bill and Doug. So that's where you'll find us together. Landis is on. What do you do? Seriously, you do like 17 podcasts a week, 17 YouTube shows and podcasts a week.
I am thankful. So that the Thursday daily is going to be Austin and Anthony Schlegel, at least during the season. So that's one fewer podcast that I'm on. One less time that you all have to deal with me.
Yeah, but that's, again, it's good that everybody loves you because otherwise most people would be sick of by now. We appreciate you guys making us part of your week. We're so grateful to everybody that signed up for the tech subscriptions. One more time, 14-day free trial, 614-662-4509. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. So grateful for you guys making us part of your Ohio State fandom. And that was Kings of Columbus.